condition, about the heart, about the mind, about what happens when the two fall out of sync. Because if there's one thing that I learned, it's that even the greatest of us, the prophets, the messengers, the heroes of every faith, had their moments where they spiraled out too. Moments when they drowned out purpose. Moments when their pain spoke louder than their peace. Moses lost his temper and had to burp somebody. Jonah ran from his calling. David fell to his desires. He couldn't stay away from them girls. And Joseph, the dreamer, the favorite son, was thrown into his pit by his brothers. Then he was cast into a prison for something that he didn't do. But here's what most people miss. Joseph wasn't innocent across the board. What was he doing in Potiphar's wife's room? He was arrogant. He flaunted his dreams instead of protecting them. He provoked envy instead of understanding it. And yet, that same pit became his preparation. That prison became his proving ground. And that's how God works. He doesn't just free you from prison, he frees you into prison. So that when you walk out, you can free others. That's what this story's about. It's not about standing here as a speaker or a leader or some name. It's about what happens when a man's spiral becomes his assignment. When the very thing that tried to destroy you becomes the blueprint that saves others. And tonight, that's what I want to offer you. Not just my story, but a mirror. Because the truth is, the messenger and the message are the same thing. And the only way any of us can truly change the world is by changing the way that we see ourselves in it. So from the outside, my childhood looked perfect. I don't even get no dad from my dad. I had two loving parents, a sister who broke barriers. My sister was in the WNBA. A brother who everybody admired. He would have been the greatest football player if he didn't get sick. We were the family that people pointed to when they talked about community, hard work, and pride. My father worked nights at the factory and days on the horse farm. Never missed a single practice, game, or moment to remind us that effort was love. So can I get a hand, like a round of applause? My mom, she was the glue, she was the heart, and she was the kind of woman that people came to for grounding. She didn't preach, but she lived the sermon. And when she walked into a room, peace came with her. So when I tell you I had everything I needed, I mean it. I didn't come from dysfunction. I came from direction. But even in the best of homes, there are moments that shape you before you even understand what shaping even means. When I was 5, I wanted to be my big brother so bad. I wanted to be Petey in every possible way. He was magnetic, talented, creative, loved by everyone. If he liked it, I loved it. If he wore it, I wanted one just like it. He was my hero. And I followed his shadow everywhere I went. One day, curiosity led me to where innocence shouldn't have gone. Petey had left behind things that belonged to an older world. Movies, tapes, and ideas that a child's mind wasn't supposed to process. And he didn't do this on purpose. He would have stopped me in a heartbeat if he knew this. But I found him. And that was the moment something in my brain, something in my wiring changed. At 5 years old, you don't understand content. You only understand feeling. And at that moment became my first lesson in something that the world would later call neuroplasticity. The way the brain molds itself around whatever experience is most often, that's what my mind learned. Stimulation before patience, secrecy before honesty, and excitement before understanding. Then that's when the thorn took root. That's the thorn that they talk about in your side. I didn't tell anyone what I'd found. Obviously, my dad just found this out right now, 40 years later, 35 years later. I just carried it quietly, like a secret too powerful to share. And over time, that secret turned into curiosity, then into craving, then into confusion. Not for substances, but for attention. Because what I learned early on was that attention could drown out confusion. Being wanted felt like clarity, even when it wasn't love. Being seen felt like validation, even when it was illusion. And that's how the addiction began. Not to a bottle or a needle, but to the feeling of being desired, admired, and noticed. Attention became oxygen. And when it was gone, I suffocated. By the time my teenage years came around, that hunger had a soundtrack. We grab a 40 of St. Ides, Old E, not for the taste, but for the ritual, and disappear into the basement or into the woods like some kind of suburban tribe. It felt cinematic. It was a cult, like the Children of the Corn. Half kids and half of us were pretending we understood life. We passed blunts, laughed mad loud, and drowned everything out under the Memphis Underground sound. That hypnotic, dark, low-end beat that made rebellion sound holy. Those nights shaped the mindset, though. Chaos felt like freedom, noise felt like peace, and silence felt dangerous. Looking back now, I see it all so clearly. My brother wasn't at fault. He was my example, and I tried too hard to become him. But what happened in that small moment would set off a chain reaction that followed me for decades. From an early age, I knew what it felt like to be admired. By the time I reached high school, I was the quarterback, the guy. In a town where football isn't just a sport, it's a second religion. And that position comes with weight. On Friday nights, the stands would be full, the lights would be bright, and the energy of the crowd made you feel like you could do no wrong. In those moments, I wasn't just Joe, I was Joey Nick. I was somebody. And when you start to get that kind of attention early, you confuse being loved with being cheered for. You start to think leadership means being followed, not being accountable. I love the game, the sweat, the structure, the brotherhood, but somewhere along the way, the game started loving me back in all the wrong ways. It fed an ego that I was already quietly knowing was growing inside of me. It rewarded confidence. It even bordered on arrogance. And when the cheers faded and when the season ended or when the crowd went home, I didn't know how to exist in silence. And that's when the early thorns started whispering again. Because you felt like you built your worth on applause. Quiet feels like failure. And that's when attention, that same addiction that started at 5, found its next phase. After high school, life shifted. I didn't go to college. I didn't chase the traditional note. But that hunger to be seen, the fire to be somebody, never left. Only now it didn't have a scoreboard to measure itself against. So I started creating my own. I became addicted to influence. Not in a textbook sense, but in the human sense. The ability to attract, to lead, to make people believe. And the truth is, I was good at it. Y'all believe me right now? The people followed. They listened. They looked to me for direction. But I wasn't leading, I was performing. I had a mask on, like Jason. It wasn't purpose guiding me. It was ego disguised as purpose. And I became obsessed with people who held control over others. Figures like Jim Jones, David Koresh, leaders who could make others completely believe in themselves. At first, it was a fascination. Ask my brothers. I told myself I was studying psychology. But over time, the line between curiosity and imitation blurred. And without even realizing it, I started using the same tools of influence that they did. Charisma, persuasion, emotional energy, until I believed my own illusion. I was very good at being a soldier for the dark side. And that's not just a metaphor. Because when you're moving in that space, feeding your ego, manipulating emotions, chasing sensations, you're serving something that doesn't want you to heal. You're helping build chaos while convincing yourself it's your enlightenment. That spiral didn't happen overnight. It built itself through small choices, each one wrapped in justification. A lie here, a compromise there, a little more control, a little less conscience. And then one day you look up and you don't recognize that man in the mirror anymore. What followed was a collapse. Fast, public, and complete. Everything that I once used to build my image became evidence against me. That same voice that led others now stood accused. My rep, my name, my community smoked. And the weight of what I did didn't just fall on me. It fell on everybody who loved me, including my family, my 2 sons, who had done nothing to deserve the fallout of my choices. That's the thing about the spiral. It doesn't destroy quietly. It drags everybody connected to you. And when the storm finally settles, and you're left staring at the wreckage, wondering how you, the kid with the loving family, the quarterback, the leader, became the man that the world now fears. That was the moment I realized, damn, I hadn't lost who I was overnight. piece by piece for years, and prison wasn't my punishment. It was the mirror, literally the mirror, that finally stopped me long enough to see myself clearly. When I first got locked up, I thought I understood what pain was. But prison introduced me to a different kind of pain. Not that kind that comes from punishment, but the kind that comes from realization. That slow ache of looking in the mirror and seeing every decision that led you there, looking dumb as hell, seeing your teachers like, why did I see that? Every moment of pride disguised as self-power. I served 14 years, from February 5th of 2010 till November 9th of 2023. Even though that's like 13 and 8. And every one of those years became its own kind of classroom. I didn't just learn about the system, I learned about myself. I started in Chester County Prison, then I went through the chain to SEI grade for classification, SEI Camp Hill for medical evaluation, and finally Laurel Highlands, a non-violent facility that felt almost like another world. It was a place filled with older men, sick men, and men trying to find the last piece of peace, and a few rowdy young bulls that love to play sports. There, our competition was therapy. We played everything: flag, basketball, volleyball, softball, lifted weights, handball. We pushed our bodies to remind ourselves that we're still alive. It was discipline disguised as rec, and it gave me stability. And that's where something unexpected happened. A man who'd grown up in Downingtown, someone who had been like a little brother to my dad, showed up. He was transferred to that same prison. And my dad ain't into no garbage, so this is one of his homies that is into the garbage, but the rest of the story is crazy. By every technical rule, he shouldn't have been at this prison. His record didn't fit the criteria for a low security facility like Laurel Highlands. But when God or the universe wants to get your attention, he'll rewrite the rules to make sure you listen. The man introduced me to a concept that would change everything in my life. It's called universal life, or what we now know as the knowledge of self. It wasn't religion, it was awareness. It's about knowing who you are, where you come from, and what you've been programmed to believe about yourself. He told me, you can't master your environment until you master your mind, and walked away. I'm standing there with my suit like, what? But it hit me though. And those words cracked something in my heart. For the first time, I truly began to understand what thought reform really meant. Not changing opinions, but transforming your understanding. I started devouring everything I could get my hands on: psychology, spirituality, sociology, philosophy, books by Dr. Naeem Akbar, Napoleon Hill, James Allen, people who taught that thoughts are seeds, and whatever you plant becomes your reality. I realized the same way that I trained my body as an athlete, I could train my mind to operate on higher ground. That was the beginning of the man I was supposed to become. But then I got word that my father became ill, and it hit me hard. That kind of news hits you different when you're behind the walls. I prayed for strength. And by the grace of something bigger than me, I was approved for a transfer to SEI Cole Township, which was much closer to home than 300 some miles, even though it was 90 miles zigzagging up into the mountains. When I got there, I'd already been in the system for nearly 10 years. I learned discipline, control, and patience, but at Cole Township, life slowed down, and it was ultra violent there. It gave me time to think, to reflect, to prepare. And I was there for about a year when COVID hit. And then suddenly the entire system went into a lockdown. There was no visits, no volunteers, no programming. We were isolated, working 12 to 16 hours in the kitchen to feed thousands of men with barely any staff to keep the operation going. Every day felt endless, and yet somehow those long hours became meditation. They forced me inward, and in that quiet chaos, I made a decision. If I couldn't help get myself out, I was going to help others stay sane within the facility. Then came the transfer to SEI Benner. That's where everything truly shifted in my life. By then, I've seen more than enough. Every type of man, every type of kind of pain, every form of giving up, and still something had been protecting me all along. Call it grace, call it purpose, or divine preservation. It wasn't luck, it was assignment. I entered the TC, or the Therapeutic Community Program, but within the first week of phase 1, the facilitators noticed something different. They saw how I interacted, how I broke down the curriculum, how I could translate complex concepts into simple truths that the guys could actually understand. A week later, they called me into the office with the program director and his supervisor. And they said, "You're not supposed to be sitting in the back row. You're supposed to be leading." Before I even finished the program, I was promoted to the PA, peer assistant, which is the highest leadership position in the community. From that moment forward, they let me run it. Run it. Not just, hey, conflict resolution. Run it. They trusted me to help guide a population most people had written off. The red flagged, the violent, the mentally ill, the hopeless, the criminally insane. They became my people. And for 4 years, I walked with them, teaching, mediating, and helping them face their own mirrors. I wasn't preaching reform, I was living it. We worked on impulse control, emotional awareness, decision making. We rebuilt men from the inside out. I became the bridge between the officers and the outcasts, between the clinically trained and the streetwise. And through it all, I saw something powerful. When a man understands himself, he stops running from himself. That's when real change. That's where Pathfinder was born. It started as a philosophy, a way to teach men how to turn their thoughts from weapons to tools, how to reflect instead of react, how to live free while serving time. The mirror, from weapons to tools, and what would later become the life manual, my curriculum, were all born behind the walls, not from theory, but from necessity. By the time I came home, I wasn't the same man who walked in. I didn't just serve time, I studied time. And in doing so, I discovered what real freedom is. Freedom isn't about walking out of a cell. It's about no longer being trapped inside yourself. I didn't leave with bitterness, fear, or confusion. I left with a blueprint, one that had been drafted in silence, tested in struggle, and proven in service. The blueprint was called Pathfinder. Pathfinder wasn't born in a boardroom. It wasn't written by a committee or designed by a consultant who never experienced this. It was born in the belly of the system, in the very place where transformation isn't supposed to happen. It was forged through years of reflection, pain, leadership, and most importantly, listening. And I realized what had created inside those walls was exactly what the world needed outside. A new way to think about themselves, a new way to live, and a new way to heal. See, prison gives you two choices. You either spend your time or you invest it. I invested mine. I didn't spend my time playing dominoes and just hooping. I did plenty of domino playing and hooping, but at the same time I went to the law library. I picked up a few books. Every day became a study in human behavior. Every conversation was an experiment in communication. You're talking to all different people all day. Every relapse, every victory, every moment of clarity became curriculum. And I carried that curriculum home. And when I came home, I saw the same pattern that I seen in there out here. People trapped, not by cells, but by cycles. Cycles of trauma, cycles of fear, addiction, poverty, pride. The same systems that claim to rehabilitate people were still only addressing symptoms, not the source of the symptom. And that's when I knew Pathfinder couldn't just be a re-entry program. It had to be a movement of thought reform. I began putting everything I had built and tested behind the walls. The Mirror, it's a workshop designed to help people to confront their truth. From Weapons to Tools is a guide to shifting from destructive to constructive thinking. And the Life Manual, it's a full curriculum rooted in metacognition, the science of understanding your own thought process. The Life Manual became the core of Pathfinder. It stands for look inside for enlightenment and live in freedom every day. not just a play on words. It's a lifestyle. Because real reform doesn't start in no courts or in community meetings. It starts in consciousness. I wanted to build something that could reach people long before they ever needed re-entry. Because everyone, whether they've been in a physical cell or a mental one, needs to learn how to free themselves from within. When I first started introducing Pathfinder, it wasn't about convincing people. It was about showing them evidence. The testimonies were pouring in. Prisoners, staff, men who once thought they were beyond redemption, all started saying the same thing. Yo, man, Pathfinder changed my life. Dudes text me still to this day, call me still to this day. Yo, you still running that? Yes. And it wasn't because I preached perfection. It was because I preached, yo, there's a possibility. Faith of a mustard seed, homes that John grows an oak. It's this big. That oak tree is giant. Came from something like that. That's what they told us. Pathfinder's not about saving people. It's about activating them. It's about handing people their power back. The power to think, the power to choose, and the power to rebuild. It's the bridge between who we were and who we're still capable of becoming. But the real magic of Pathfinder isn't that it came from me. It's that it belongs to everybody. It's inclusive, not exclusive. It's built for humanity, for the fallen, for the forgotten, for the faithful, and the fearless. It's for the ones who've been written off, the ones who've been through hell, and the ones who are still climbing out. Because in every person there's a light. And Pathfinder's mission is simple: to teach people how to carry that light and not let it get snuffed out. When I look back now, I realize that everything, the spiral, the pain, the prison, the years, it wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It was the path that I had to walk so I could show others how to find their path. This is why it's called Pathfinder. Because we don't just talk about the path, we walk it together. I started seeing this mistake everywhere. People trying to change their behavior without changing how you think. How do you do that? That computer has a virus in it. Man, we gotta hit McAfee. Change that joint up. It's like repairing a wall that's still wet with mold on it. Until you reach the root, the mold will return. That's why thought reform matters. It's not manipulation or control, it's liberation. It's the science and spirit of retraining the inner world that drives the outer world. Before any kind of reform can happen out here, it has to happen in here, in the heart and in the mind. Most of us were taught that thinking comes first, that logic lead and feelings follow. But the truth is, we feel before we think. The heart fires first. I feel some type of way about that. You start thinking. The brain races to explain what the heart already decided. That's why real reform can't begin in policy. It begins in places where people feel. We're missing the point. And that's what we're not teaching. We teach kids ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but we don't teach them EQs, emotional quotients. Kids can memorize multiplication tables, but can't multiply compassion. They learn how to count to 10 when you're angry. Billy, you count to 10, you're being bad. But nobody tells Billy what to do with the emotions while he counts. We hand out calculators before we teach anybody how to calculate what's going on inside them. No wonder adults can balance a checkbook, but can't balance themselves. Emotional intelligence should be as common in classrooms as pencils. Across the globe, from kindergarten to reentry units. Because a person who can name what they're feeling has already taken half of the power away from the emotion. That's what thought reform really is, the education we never got. It teaches people to pause between feeling and reacting, to find the gap where the choice actually lives. It's the discipline of tracing every action back to its emotional seed. That's the true order of transformation. Heart, mind, behavior. And when the heart heals, the mind clears, the body follows. That's the foundation of transformative justice. not leniency, not pity, healing. You can't punish pain out of a person. And you can't cage trauma and expect it to fix itself. Most systems are brilliant at breaking people down. They call it discipline, but they never teach us how to rebuild. Transformation doesn't end at breaking, it begins at rebuilding. Scripture says, be ye renewed by the transformation of your mind, not restoration, transformation. I don't want to be restored back to the original state. That's what led me to KD 7706. Restore me and help me transform. Restoration returns you to what you were. Transformation pushes you towards what you could be. And this is where restorative justice has to level up. Restoring what was lost is half of the job. A restorative justice practitioner must evolve into a transformative justice practitioner, someone who doesn't just repair damage, but helps people become brand new. Restoration brings balance, transformation brings evolution. And addiction proves this point. Addiction isn't only chemical, it's the repetition of thought that leads to self-destruction. It's chasing relief that always ends in regret. Everyone's addicted to something. Some to drugs, some to control, some to attention, some to fear. We're all recovering from something. That's why reentry and recovery are the same road spoken in two dialects. One about incarceration, the other about intoxication. Both are about coming home to yourself. Thought reform gives people the tools that when they return, it teaches them how to think through what they feel, to spot the pattern before it repeats itself. It's the recidivism terminator. To rewrite the story before it becomes another chapter of regret. It's the recidivism terminator. That's how relapse and recidivism both start to fall. Not through fear of punishment, but through understanding. That's why I don't chase prison reform or police reform alone. Those are systems, and systems mirror the people inside of them. Heal the people, and you heal the systems heal itself. That's what Pathfinder was built for. To merge reentry, recovery, and reform under one philosophy. Because safer communities aren't built on stronger laws, they're built on stronger hearts and more understanding. Teach people how to feel before they think before they act, and act with awareness instead of reaction. You've already reformed the world. That's the blueprint. Not punishment, but preparation. Not fear, but faith in the human capacity to renew itself. When thought reform takes root in the heart and transformative justice takes hold of the community, you don't just have a program, you have a movement. One that begins where all true education should have begun. The classroom in your heart. If Pathfinder is the philosophy, then the coalition should be the proof. Because transformation only becomes real when it turns communal. No one reforms alone. Not the prisoner, not the person in recovery, not even the professional trying to help them. Reform takes relationship. This is why this coalition must exist. Because the only way to rebuild what's broken is together. What we're creating here isn't just a network. It's a living system of support, honesty, and shared healing. This isn't a place for ego. This is a place for elevation. Can we say that word again? Elevation. Thank you. It's a reminder that every voice, every story, and every perspective matters. Because when one person changes, the ripple touches the whole community. See, we had reentry programs for years, and most of them mean well. They teach you how to write a resume, balance a checkbook, or get a driver's license. They'll walk you through how to apply for benefits or open a savings account. But let's be real. That's not what a reentrant's trying to hear when they get out. Because none of that means anything to a person that wakes up feeling empty, unwanted, and disconnected. You can hand somebody financial literacy, but if they don't have the emotional literacy, they'll still end up broken in spirit. You can help them find a job, but if their hope is gone, they won't keep it. We've mistaken management for transformation. We've built systems that teach people how to survive instead of how to live. reentrant really needs is a space that offers them belief again. A community that gives them a peace of mind. A second chance without a second set of chains. They need a place that says, yo, we see y'all, not we'll monitor y'all. A space where they can learn how to manage finances and learn how to enjoy them. Where they can take a trip to the beach and be like, dang, I don't feel like I'm about to go to jail for some reason. Like you're sitting on the beach, the seagulls, you can't even enjoy the seagulls. It's like, it's parole, like, they know that I'm here. Like,
right.
We don't need that. But we do need that. This is weird. But this is why the coalition's so vital. Because we can't keep serving people leftovers and calling it reform. We can't keep checking boxes while souls are starving for connection. The work we're doing here is deeper than what already exists. It's emotional, it's psychological, it's spiritual, it's human. I'm almost done, y'all. We're not just helping people adjust, we're helping them awaken. We're not just preparing them for employment, we're preparing them for enjoyment. Because a person who often feels safe, seen, and supported will make better decisions. Not out of fear, but out of freedom. And let's not forget who we're called to reach. The scripture says, remember those in prison as though you were there with them. It says to care for the orphan. It says to care for the widow, the stranger, the quote-unquote weirdo. Those are not metaphors, they're mandates. Like, what book are you reading? They remind us that the people most rejected by society are often the ones in most need of redemption. The prisoner, the addict, the forgotten, the misunderstood. They're the modern day leper. They all deserve a seat at the table, though. Who are you? Because if we can't make room for the broken, then we don't deserve to call ourselves a coalition. The coalition exists because no one organization can heal what's been damaged for generations. We need every voice, the lived experience, the clinical expertise, the law enforcement, the faith-based, the educators, the mentors, the advocates, whatever. We need the people who once judged and the people who were judged. Because the healing won't come from separation, it comes from synergy. We're building the model that others will one day follow. Like, y'all gotta believe this. A community that treats reform not as a project, but as a purpose. A place where accountability is rooted in love, where structure meets compassion, and where progress doesn't require perfection, just a little participation. So if you're here, you're not just attending a meeting, you're helping shape history. This coalition can be a bridge between punishment and potential, between systems and souls, between what the world says we are and what we know we can become. Because reform without relationship is bureaucracy. But reform built on belief, that's transformation. That's how you make a community safe. Not by enforcing fear, but by empowering faith in one another again. This is the foundation of everything that we are doing. Not for the applause, not for the credit, but because it's right and because it's time. And if we don't build it, who will? Beginning in November, we'll start a 6 to 8 week course of workshops and groups right here through this coalition, testing the Pathfinder pilot. It's a first of its kind. Lived experience, leading the conversation, professional allies supporting the framework, and everyone learning in real time what transformation really looks like. And make no mistake, y'all, people are watching this, John. I don't know if y'all know like how serious my plight is, but people are watching this, John. Not just in this county, across the Commonwealth, across the country, and now in Australia. They're straight up watching this, and y'all are all part of this. They're watching to see if a small group of people can prove that unity still works. That's why tonight, this isn't just another update, it's an invitation, y'all. Because nothing that was built, Pathfinder, the Life Manual, workshops, means anything without the people willing to carry this drone forward. Every person in this room has something the rest of us need. Some of you know how to organize. Some of you know how to listen. Some of you simply know how to keep showing up when things get heavy. That's what builds a movement. Not titles, not funding, but presence. We need all. Not just the service providers and the agencies, but the ones who lived it. The ones who came home and kept their word. The ones still fighting to be seen as whole human beings. That's the heart of this work, though. Bringing those voices together and refusing to let any of those people be forgotten. That's why this coalition matters. It's the structure that makes grace possible. It's how we turn good ideas into daily work and daily work into lasting change. So if we move to this next phase of Sundays, ask yourself, what part of me does this mission need?
I don't like
Come on, Dad. What part of me does this next phase or this mission need? What skill, what story, what strength have I been holding back that belongs in this effort? Because this only works when we each bring to the table what we have. We don't need everybody doing the same thing. We need everybody doing their thing together. The eyes on us don't scare me. They remind me that people are ready for something real. They're ready to see a community that doesn't hide its scars but uses them as proof of healing. Let's give them that proof, though. Let's make these 8 weeks count. Let's show what happens when lived experience and professionalism stop competing and start collaborating. Because if we do this right, people won't just remember what we said. They'll remember how it felt to be in the room when change finally started breathe, finally stopped being a theory and change started breathing. I'm cool, man. I'm gonna throw this drawing out real fast. All my stuff goes in the trash. That's my ritual. It's just something that I do. It's over with.
I get it, man.
The seed
I
was
get it.
planted. I got one for you.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, thanks for listening. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, time to go. It's like, nah. All right. Was that cool for y'all?
Yeah.
All right, them 6 to 8 weeks then, if y'all like, yeah, it was cool, then be here.
All right.
Because I need everybody.
Very powerful.
We need one another.
Very powerful.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I think it you know.
You personally, do you believe that the way a person is as an, the way a person is as an adult
Get out of here.
stems from the way they were?
As a child,
Yes.
adverse childhood experiences is something we're going to talk about really heavy. The ACEs test, we're going to
Yeah.
run through all that type of stuff.
I'm
When I
in.
was down in Florida, we ran into each other in Florida at a conference, but they had this whole thing built on ACEs. And the guy blew me away,
Wait, what's-
gave me everything that I would need for the curriculum.
What's ACEs mean?
Adverse childhood experiences, so whatever you've been through, there's a scale.
Right.
You know, they'll have you check off things in boxes.
I'm at the
and
top of that one.
We
I'll
go,
tell you that.
you gotta be here in November. I can't
I'll
get
be here.
up.
Great, thank you.
So you guys don't have to ask questions, man. It's weird.
Well,
because, like, just let it sit.
Like, I just want to
So
say,
you can, like, you know,
I just want to say, like, you've always been a very good orator and very, good, like, you have very, very many good leading qualities and a lot of potential in that matter. The way that you explain this and the way that, like, I try to explain to people, because, like, I'm like, it's kind of a product of who we are as, like, growing up and all that kind of stuff, and the way that our minds think, and it's very hard to kind of get that message properly out to people. What I would say to everybody here is what he's saying, though, is, like, very fundamentally true. Like, if his words said it way better than mine, but it's the fact of, like, the things will change, but it has to start with a group of people that show up and from the ground up actually make it change. And that is, like, you've seen people try to do it in the past. What Malcolm X, like, people like that, you've seen people try to do it. And once it gets to a certain point, but, like, it starts with stuff like this, but this can be that big, that fast, if people really
take heed to what we do.
Exactly, man. And then listen to this man because he knows what he's talking about. And like,
That's my dog.
yeah, like
Why?
but I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm not, you know what I mean? Like you can explain the way I think and interact with people better than I can, man. Like I don't interact with a lot of people because I pick and choose now who I spend my time on because I've helped a lot of people in a lot of situations. And when he was talking about being head of that program, when they made me head of house at Gaudenzia and stuff, and I was helping murderers get over fighting each other and becoming friends and saying I love you to each other and having them, look forward to the meetings all the time. And people in the right situations with the right type of abilities and the right lived experiences really can fundamentally change the way people think and see it, and even in those environments or especially in the real world. I think the most important thing about this is like this has to take root and be spread. Like, you know what I mean? Like it has to bloom into something that will make change because there's going to be a lot of obstacles, in order for it to get there. But I believe it 100%, and I believe in you. I love you, dog. I'm glad you're out here doing this, man. I'm right here, you know that.
We want to have him as our artist too, man. Like sometimes when we're having group,
Thank
we
you.
want to hear painting the energy. Be like, yo, bro, just paint the essence, man. That's what we do. Like, we've always done that. So when we're here in our group, there'll always be something painted by this cat. He's gonna always chime in, and you can see that's our dog. But he's our artist, and he's different, and he can draw the energy and the essence of the room. So we'll have that incorporated with our stuff. Art therapy is gonna be heavy in this program because of my man.
That's fun. You could.
Yeah, I'm good, y'all. Like, you gotta roll.
So thanks for coming.
We'll put him on the camera. Put him right here. Oh, yo,
I got Daniel.
Quinn?
Can I get a picture first?
Sorry, Daniel Quinn.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, he's
If you don't know what it is, you
on
want to ask
death
questions
row.
before you walk over that other road.
He just lights another re-entrance.
Wait, his name is Daniel Gwynn,
Yeah.
and he's in what?
He used to be on death row. He does work.
Okay.
Only if people want to be in the picture. If you want to be in the
Oh,
picture.
okay, cool. Yeah, here, let's do this picture. Let's do this
Everybody
picture.
with me, y'all. If not,
If you're willing to get in the picture, stand here.
that's the thing. We gotta show people how deep we are.
I go from December 1st to December.
that means you gotta go front.
Not even five.
If I'm taller than you, I gotta go
Right
behind
here
you.
with me.
Come on, you tall.
I know, I was gonna either like sit down in the front so that,
Yeah, you tall.
you know what I mean?
There you go.
Three, two, one. Thank you.
What about you? You're not in it.
That's it.
Oh, no, Katie, you
Yeah, nah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.